I need to bring in David Asonye Ihenacho. He's going to be speaking to the topic Christianity in Africa, Quo Vadis. David, please, you can take the floor.
Yeah, I am here. Are you hearing me?
Yes, I can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, good. Good afternoon to everyone over there. My name is David Asonye, as I've been introduced. First of all, a little bit of housekeeping. I am a Marquette alumnus. I graduated from Marquette in 1999. I want to thank Professor Cyril Arju, if he's there, because he was the one actually that connected me to the Marquette family. I appreciate that because it's been a while I've not been a part of this wonderful conversation. Secondly, my paper I dedicate to those who found me at Marquette, whether they are dead or alive. I remember in a very special way Professor Father William Kurtz, my advisor, who helped me in a very serious way. And also remember such professors as Professor Carlos Stockhausen. She was a wonderful, somebody who helped me also, and many others that I keep in my memory always. My topic is a little bit controversial, it's a little bit jarring. Christianity in Africa, Quo Vadis. Christianity in Africa. Where is Christianity going in Africa? I've listened to the excellent lectures of many of the lecturers who have read their paper. I'm fascinated by what they have contributed, especially the problem between Christianity in Africa and the indigenous cultures, the ongoing battle, what we call enculturation. I've written some books on all this anyway, but I wouldn't go there. So, the title of this paper is a little bit of an adaptation of the post-synodal exhortation of Pope St. Francis, Pope John Paul II. After the Synod in Africa, he released an exhortation called Ecclesia in Africa. And I adapted it for ecumenical reasons to be Christianity in Africa, Quo Vadis. And my statement is this: this particular statement, this particular title, can in our view serve as the theme of the Third Synod on Africa whenever it will be convoked. This is because this simple question encompasses all issues bothering Christianity in the continent of Africa of today. It is a question that must be constantly put to African Christians and scholars, whether in diaspora or in the continent. Every Christian in Africa and the entire Christian world should always be confronted with such simple questions. Where is African Christianity headed? Quo vadis? Are we aware of the monumental traits of Christianity in the continent of Africa in this third millennium? Do we know, or do we not care, that the so-called booming Christianity of Africa today may one day disappear completely, like its predecessor of the first millennium? And I was reading just a few days ago, I read B. Maher, what he said. I watched Bill Maher, Bill Maher's return on HBO show on September 27, 2025, lamenting how the media was ignoring the horrible religious situation in Nigeria. According to him, and I quote, they have killed over 100,000 since 2009. They have burned 18,000 churches. This is so much more. These are the Islamists, Boko Haram. This is so much of a genocide attempt than what is going on in Gaza. I said, the observation of Bill Maher regarding the ongoing genocide in Nigeria is only a sample of what is happening in most sub-Saharan African nations of today. There's a massive killing by Islamic jihadists all over the continent. And we believe that this is only the beginning of what militant Islam is planning for the continent. Their ultimate goal is to obliterate Christianity in the African continent. And this is what is happening. And I said, because I'm going to summarize my work, because my work is extensive on this issue. It is gradually nearing a consensus among African scholars that after the slave trade of the 14th to the 19th centuries, coupled with the infamous Berlin Conference of 1885, in which the African continent was partitioned and shared out among colonial European nations, Africa and African peoples appear to have lost their way completely. And I mean this. Ever since these two historical tragedies, the real challenge for Africans has been how to recover from the trauma and confusion that have ever persisted in the continent. As the continent was devoured, carved up, and sold in parts through slavery and in bulk through national partitioning in a way that foreshadowed the activities of present-day human organ harvesters. Every aspect of Africa was infested with a very destructive virus that has permanently hobbled, disabled, and caused her not to function properly ever since. However, if this is the case, and I'm jumping, what is the role of a contemporary African scholar of religion in bringing credibility to the current African Christianity? What can an African religious scholar do to help restore the certainty and confidence that were once the hallmark of early Christianity in Africa? Once again, to make the whole situation worse, African Christianity's faith is being compounded by the rising fundamentalist Islamic militancy that seems as determined as hell to recapture the entire continent by destroying and obliterating every little opposition to its course. Islamic militancy, having noticed the partitioning, the weakness of everything in the continent as a result of the prolonged slave trade and the continent's partitioning by European colonialists, and having seen the fragility, because African Christianity is very fragile, having noticed the fragility of African Christianity that seems permanently tethered to the aprons of European colonialism, appears to sense an opportunity to cash in and repeat its first millennium feat of conquering the continent and enthroning itself as the dominant force in her. The new resolve of militant Islam has resulted in a potentially looming armed conflict in the continent in the nearest future between the two opposing religions, namely Christianity and Islam. It is our common belief throughout the continent that the specter of Boko Haram, bandits, Islamic herdsmen, ISWAP, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and other Islamic fundamentalist militant uprisings in the continent are nothing but a dress rehearsal. And I want to emphasize this. These are nothing but a dress rehearsal and a precursor to a major religious conflict between Islam and Christianity in Africa. And for much of the second millennium, and jumping, Islam subtly made an audacious claim that Africa was hers to claim as a birthright, while casting Christianity that was there long before her and that once dominated the continent, as especially the North African region, as an intruder, a weak and replaceable religion on the continent. In our view, all this is as a result of near absence of good scholarship in African Christianity. And I insist, despite what we are saying, our scholarship in African Christianity is not creative enough. We are still hanging on to European Christianity, which is in a lockstep. It has a marital relationship with colonialism. And colonialism, being an immoral project, cast a very dangerous shadow on Christianity, African Christianity. It is a Christianity that is hanging on to colonialism. So, because of this, what is the situation in Africa? Since about the year 2000 BCE, when the primogenitor of the Semitic race, Abraham, took off with the members of his large family from his faraway village of Ur of the Chaldeans in present-day Iraq on a botched effort to settle in the urban city of Egypt to about 1500 BCE, when the founder of the Semitic nation of Israel, Moses, was said to have been born in one of the sprawling cities of Egypt, as Africa was known then, and raised in the palace of the pharaohs, the most renowned ruler in the continent of Africa then, down to 500 BCE, when the Greek historian Herodotus wrote some fairly extensive stories about the continent. Africa has been presenting an almost insurmountable problem to historiographers. And what I mean by this, Africa had a history. It had a history that was profound, that was praised. But then, because of what has happened in Africa in the last 2 millennia, then it looks like Africa has lost its way. So in my next chapter, I dealt with how Africa has been rebaptized severally. Diop of Senegal was the person who said that the original name of Africa was Alkebulan. Alkebulan was the original name of Africa. And if we go back to the BCs, even before there was the Egypt, you will see that people of Africa, they had an identity which was epitomized by what was happening in Egypt. When Egypt developed a sophisticated urbanization and political system and scientific system that was not matched anywhere in the world. But then, that time, the Asiatic nations, the one we call the Middle East, they were coming to Egypt. They first came for trade. They were the migrant workers. They were the workers, the hands that were employed to build the pyramids. After that, and they came specifically for trade. Then, around 500 BCE, the people that arrived were, before that, 2000 BCE, the Semitic nation, the Israelites, there were no Jews then, they arrived as also migrant workers. And some of them came to escape famine in the land. And eventually, still Africa was intact. Then eventually, the Greeks, the first Europeans to come to Africa, they came to study. It was intellectual curiosity that drove them to Egypt. They came to study. Eventually, towards the beginning of 2nd century BCE, the Romans took over from the Greeks. And then they were the ones that brought brigandage into Africa. They renamed Africa into Africa. I won't go to that because it will take a lot of my time. I don't have a lot of time. So, Africa has been going through a lot of rebaptisms. And this has impacted it very, very seriously. So, today's Africa, with the uprising of Islamic fundamentalism and militancy, is now telling us that the Christianity that we are doing theology about, the Christianity that we are celebrating, may not survive. Because Islamic fundamentalism has gotten a new trick, a new methodology. And the methodology it has gotten is to simplify, splinter itself into different factions. And they have the same objective, to wipe out Christianity in our own time. And Christianity, the type of Christianity we have, being a post-missionary Christianity, a Christianity that is hanging on the apron of colonialism, and colonialism that came through before slave trade and eventually in pursuit of the wealth of Africa. That Christianity, its seed is not deeply planted in the soil of Africa. And that Christianity is destined to die if attacked, as the Islamic fundamentalists now are programming themselves, preparing to attack Christianity in Africa. As I said, what you are calling Boko Haram, bandits, El Shaddad, all these militant groups, these are dress rehearsal to launching an all-out war in Africa against African Christianity. So what I'm going to do, what I intend to do, because the paper I have is a long one, it's about 35 pages. What I want us to do is
5 minutes to go.
Oh Jesus. What plans are we making towards survival? I am proposing that we have to begin a kind of a theology of African self-defense and resistance. This theology of African self-defense and resistance is to be anchored first on the passages of the Bible I call the sword passages. The sword passages are those passages in which Jesus talked about the use of sword. You have to procure your own sword. If you read Luke chapter 22, 35 to 38 of that, then you get a little bit of it. John 18, 10 to 11, Matthew 10, 34, etc. This is where our theology, we have to develop a new theology. Africa needs a new catechesis, a catechesis of survival. And that catechesis, Africa needs a new catechism. The current catechism is not working for Africa. It's not going to help Africa survive the onslaught of militant Islam. We have to have a new curriculum, a new catechesis, a new theology, a theology that is anchored on the sword passages. Jesus told his disciples, procure your sword, be ready for action. We should do that, even though he also gave condition on which to use the sword. Then, that curriculum I'm talking about, we have to be anchored with just war theories. We marry the theology that we want to invent with the just war theories. We'll be able to develop a new catechesis to prepare future Africans for what the Islamic religion is planning against Africa. The next one is we have to dust up. What I call it here is dust up and update the patristic medieval ecclesiology, ecclesia militans and ecclesia triumphans. We have to dust up. This is a patristic ecclesiology, a patristic and medieval ecclesiology, in which people who are being persecuted, they constitute ecclesia militants. I want us to tweak that militance a little bit, to be a foundation for us to train our people to be able to be militant in defending themselves and in defending their Christianity. They have to be, because the traditional interpretation of ecclesia militants is you surrender to be captured, to die, to be persecuted, because is a doorway to joining ecclesia triumphant, the church triumphant. But that cannot serve Africa. It did not serve Africa well in the first millennium when Islam wiped out North African Christianity. But in this 21st century, we have to dust it up a little bit. Tell our people, you are ecclesia militants, not just surrendering to.
Even they do it as an English. I think
it's a
lady
connection.
It's frozen.
Yeah, it's a connection thing.
Yeah.
Are you there?
Yeah, we are
We are here.
Are you listening to me? You want me to continue?
Yes, you have 2 more minutes.
2 more minutes. So what I'm saying is, for us to be able to help African Christianity to survive what is coming, we have to develop a theology of self-defense and resistance. That theology is to be anchored on the sword passages of the gospel. Jesus telling his disciples, procure your arms, be ready. Be ready to defend yourself. Not stupidly, not carelessly, but bear your arm. This has to be taught. Our Christianity has been dovetailed by teaching on turning the other cheek. That didn't serve us right when Islam eliminated Christianity in North Africa. Now, let us turn a theology of self-defense. Latin America, they have their own theology of liberation. Africa should have its own theology of self-defense and resistance to militate against being obliterated by Islamic fundamentalism. And when we also couple it with the ecclesiology of ecclesia militans, that we are a militant church. That's exactly what I want to drive home to everybody. We are a militant church, and we should really live out our legacy as a church that can bear arms and defend ourselves. That's the only way we can survive. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Ecclesia Militante. I want to invite, yes, I see some hands, so I will go with Emmanuel, Robert, Simon Mary, and Professor Dadowski, please, in that order. Straight to your question, and then we hope we get a direct answer.
Thank you very much, David, for your presentation. I don't want to comment on your endorsement of militancy, and this seems to be more violent militancy. But what I just want to comment on, there is, I don't know if you have read it, there's an article, a response to Bill Maher, whom you quoted at the beginning, by a senior special assistant to the Nigerian president. His name is Gimba Kakanda, who is in charge of research in the office of the president. So he wrote a response to Bill Maher, which is published on Al Jazeera website. You might like to read it. But what I just want to highlight is that...
I've read it.
Okay. Yeah, okay. What I want to highlight first and foremost is this narrative about an Islamic agenda for the obliteration of Christianity, whether in Nigeria or in Africa. I don't know how much research has really been done in that regard, because we cannot take Bill Maher's word that 100,000 Christians have been killed, 18,000 churches have been burned, without providing sufficient historical scientific basis for those claims. I'm a priest from Nigeria, I am a Catholic. I'm not saying that Boko Haram did not target Christians, but in terms of statistics, it is actually true that more Muslims were killed by Boko Haram, because this was something that happened predominantly in northern Nigeria that is Muslim, and that more Muslims were actually killed than Christians by Boko Haram. And I think that we need to do more historical research to be able to ascertain numbers, and I can go on and on, but I just wanted to put that out and to ask what your response is to that. That's one. The second question, which is slightly connected, is the fact of many people seeing politics, Nigerian politics, as an avenue for advancing this Islamic agenda. And this was the narrative when we had a president in the last administration who was Muslim, and most of the political appointees in the Nigerian security and military agencies were Muslim. Now we have a Muslim president again, but then these positions are taken by Christians, whether it's the Chief of Defense Staff, Chief of Army Staff, Director of State Security. All of these people are Christian. So it turns again the narrative of a Muslim state that is out to obliterate Christianity. So I'm just asking how you interpret all of these changing political and demographic dynamics.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate your contribution. The issue to start with, there's a lot of statistics. If you venture to go into Google it, you will see the different agencies that have really provided statistics about the level of genocide that is going on in Nigeria. That is known to almost everybody. And the people who are targeted, who were even in the 1990s, the people who were targeted were churches, Christians, priests. You're a priest. You know the number of priests that were killed, especially in Jos area, people who are coming back from Mass. There have been so many priests, so many other people killed. The latest development coming from the Sahel area, in which Muslims are targeting Muslims, that seems to be a new strike in the whole situation. But originally the agenda has been, and the agenda remains, to wipe out Christianity. They said it loud and clear that that was their goal. About the present government in Nigeria that is made up of Christians, you may be right, but the issue is there's a grand design by every government, including the Tinubu government, to edge out Christianity or to marginalize Christianity in Nigeria. It is real. You have to just own it up. This is what is happening. Even the Tinubu administration is making way for Muslims, really, to edge out Christianity in Nigeria.
Okay, thank you. Albert, you have your question quickly. We'll try to do this within the next 7 minutes.
Good.
Yeah, my question. My question is about. You said that Boko Haram is Islamic organization. According to my research, there is. Frankly, I'm studying Islam for 20 years, and I never saw one single researcher, really serious researcher, who would say that Boko Haram is Islamic organization, or rooted in the Quran in a way that will be acceptable to any Islamic scholar or white Islamic community.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. Boko Haram originated from Nigeria, the north eastern part of Nigeria, the Borno state. Boko Haram means book is nonsense. Book is nothing. It's in Nigeria. I don't know what happens in other place, whether you have Boko Haram in other countries. But in Nigeria, it's a purely Islamic fundamentalist organization. There's no doubt about that. They may not be interpreting the Quran correctly according to you, but they are dependent on their reading of the Quran. That's their own reading. Islam has no univocal reading of the Quran to start with. There are different factions of Islam reading the Quran the way they want to understand it. But Boko Haram is purely an Islamic fundamentalist militant organization that is going about slaughtering people. That's the agenda, that's their task.
Thank you. Simon?
Two quick comments, and that's it. The first is that Boko Haram started in 1980. It was an Islamic revival movement for the community. Then eventually by 2000, it deviated from that and became a political militant group. So what it was at the beginning is no longer what it was today. So there's still yes and no connection. Now, the other quick comment I wanted to make for you that you might find, I was thinking maybe you need to explore that from a sociological point of view, because you mentioned how Islam took over North Africa and all that stuff. By the time Islam entered North Africa, the monastic tradition had already been cloistered. The vibrancy of Christianity, the revival and the fire, the energy behind Christianity is the monastic, the mystical tradition. But the mystics were now in cloistered convents and monasteries. So they were no longer being able to influence and charge the Christian revival in that region. So Christianity was literally a more elitist religion. So when Islam came, it was a very pragmatic religion. It was able to capture the imagination of the people. So I was thinking that what you should be advocating is a revival of a Christian spirituality that can address this militant Islamic group, because militant Islamic group is also a pragmatic expression of Islamic spirituality, but through a militant pathway. So rather than do that way, we can still go back. We have something to counter the Islamic militant group through the spiritual revival, and not only keeping them in the monasteries. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
I appreciate what you're saying. You are right. We are not going to use one size fits all. But Islam understands only one thing. It understands armed struggle. No matter how mystical you are in your interpretation of Christianity, if you are not armed, you are going to be wiped out. Simple as that. If you refuse to carry arms, because how Islam dialogues, they dialogue with a bullet. Their leaders are invisible. So if you are not willing to carry arms, you can go and meditate as much as you want, but then you'll be killed.
Thank you. Professor Dadowski, please come to the microphone.
Hello, Professor.
Thank you so much, Professor Dadowski.
You will pray for me tonight for voicing some concerns of your paper.
Okay, good.
Please.
This is what this is all about.
I'm concerned that I didn't hear you say anything about. It sounded like you were suggesting that Christians should take up violence. Now, you didn't discount that. My other concern is that it sounds like you're linking Islamic extremists altogether with Islam. And it seems to me, if this white person could suggest something for African theology, that a lot of the conflict could be helped by mimetic theory of groups competing with groups and tribes competing with tribes, and that would help and I'm sure people have done it. One of my former students have worked on it, and for me, the only use for the church militant might be within the context of an exorcism. But there are too many Christians on this side of the hemisphere that would like to militarize Christianity and are militarizing it. So those are my concerns, but you will pray for me tonight.
Thank you so much. Let me respond to you. First of all, I am not advocating violence for the sake of violence. I am drawing from the Bible itself, because Luke 22, where Jesus said, this is the time, if you don't have the sword, go and buy one. And there are so many instances of that. It's violence for self-defense, because that's the last resort. If you don't carry arms to defend yourself, you'll be eliminated. That's the reality in Africa. Secondly, you cannot interpret the fight between militants and Christianity as a kind of a group, ethnic or rivalry. No, it's beyond that. What is happening is Islam in its present phase, violent phase, doesn't have any other thing to achieve its aim of dominating the people than killing as many people as possible. When this is the case, what are you going to do? Are you simply going to fall down and allow yourself to be slaughtered, or will you find a way to defend yourself? What is at issue here is self-defense. It's not violence for violence sake. And then you simplify the situation by saying it is a gang against gang. It's not. It's far beyond all that. Thank you.
I will just add that an anecdote that I knew it was over for ISIS when the Taliban started targeting them as an enemy. So that much of Islam does not like these extremists either. So, but you will pray for me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
We have already eaten into our break by 5 minutes, but what I will say is if you need to stretch, feel free to do that while we just continue this conversation in the next few minutes.
Can you give me one point?
Yes, please. Make your observation. Yeah, anyone who needs to stretch.
First of all, Father David, this is Fisahai from All Saints How you doing?
Okay.
Remember me?
Good.
Good, good.
I do remember you.
Okay, so your point is a little bit for me that comes from 50-50 Christian and Muslim
Thank you.
area. This is a little bit unsettling in terms of how we react to our brothers and sisters. In every culture and history, there is extremism. During the Reformation, Christians were killing each other as what they are Muslims doing. The Darfur, Sudan area conflict was Muslim on Muslim. It was a clash of cultures between nomadic and sedentary cultures that we have to understand. But my point is, to Simon's addition, North African Christianity was wiped out because the heavy Roman presence and colonialism and taxation that was an alternative sin to Christianity, to Islam, to Christianity. So we have to have a historical context. However, the militant groups that are coming, that are doing the Boko Haram or Al Qaeda or others, are the product of political failures. In Saudi Arabia because they were excluded from participation and they found soft spots and started spreading out. So we cannot paint everything with the same brush. However, this is like a brush fire that eventually will burn out of itself. If we stage up this militant attitude, then we will not stop anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I don't know whether I disagree with what you're saying, but what is at stake for me is the survival of Christianity. Having learned from what happened to North African Christianity that was 700 years old and it disappeared, I am concerned that our own Christianity in Africa that is not up to 200 years, that is not planted deep in the soil of Africa because of colonialism, may disappear. So we have to figure out a way to preserve our Christianity and save it from being obliterated. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.